Hey, thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist Podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. If you've never been into my podcast before, I appreciate you for giving me a try. What we do on this podcast is I talk about issues that we go through and I help you think about ways you can work through them. My whole platform and the premise of what I talk about is helping you shift the way you think because we can get stuck in some faulty thinking. And I realize like a lot of us are so used to just surviving life, we don't recognize like how we can work on living life. And there are some things that we can do that we don't recognize. Oh, if I just change the way I'm doing this, or if I just change my exposure to this, it can really help me shift my mindset, right? So today we're talking about the consumption, what you consume. One of the things I do, if you've been listening to this for a while, I love listening to motivational videos. I look at it as my medicine. And I was listening to, I can't think of his name right now, Myron something. And one of the things he talked about as creating change is the consumption of what we consume. So we're just going to jump right into it. And if you are listening to me on audio, don't forget these episodes are on YouTube. I create visuals. So if you want to follow along, if you want to make this part of your wellness journey, right? These podcasts I'm talking about, very short, to the point, to help you with the way that you're operating. So one of the words that he used was disciplined consumption and how that can help people with their habits, right? And so that was one of the things that he shared. And I just wanted to break specifically discipline consumption down because I recognize people may not realize exactly how the way that they're consuming things could be affecting their mental health, right? Um, so, what is disciplined consumption? So, in the context of mental health and well being, it's the mindful, intentional approach to what we consume in life, including not only material goods, but experiences and activities, right? Obviously, like food is something we consume. I feel like that's another topic. Just really quick, this is not a part of my podcast, but what you eat as well can affect your mental health, brain fog, all of these things. So, really be mindful of it. That's a podcast by itself that I want to create. Where I'm talking about like the foods and things that you're eating, moving your body like it matters. Today, we're talking about conversations, what you're exposing yourself to, right? Because a lot of times we don't realize, like, oh, I'm having these conversations with my coworkers, even after work, talking about all the hard things that have happened at work, not recognizing like you're just allowing yourself to stay in that space mentally, right? You could leave work and still find yourself consumed by work, right? So, this idea of disciplined consumption, I hope that if you have been struggling with some of the ways that you're feeling and thinking, it'll help you think about, well, like, what is it that I'm consuming? When I'm struggling, I check in with myself. Okay, what am I doing? I know if I watch a movie, like I'll look at what the movie's about. I don't like watching sad stuff. I just don't. I'm not saying like you can't watch that. Me personally, I know what my limitations are, and I won't watch the movie. And if I do watch something and a scene or something catches me off guard, I can really feel it and how I feel. And I work on changing my algorithm by watching something funny. um, so the forms of consumption, media, like what we're watching, what we're seeing, conversations, and self-talk, right? So your consumption of information and perspectives happen in these various forms. So I want you to be mindful of these forms of consumption. I'm gonna talk about how they affect us, right? I'm gonna break it down. So the media consumption, right? What you're watching on TV, what you are looking at on social media. So there's visual and audio influence, right? So the content we assume through television, movies, and music can create strong emotions. I just post, someone's like, oh, you don't go on your stories as much on Instagram. I'm actually busy too. One of the things is I'm busy, but also social media is, I mean, what's happening around the world is hard. There's a lot of hard news. And as much as I try to curate my feed, sometimes things come up. And I can feel it in my spirit. Like, especially one of the things I don't like bullies. And there's a lot happening in America that I feel like is very bullying behavior. And when I say there's nothing I can do about it, meaning I can't change it overnight. And also, I just want people to be mindful too. Like, there's so much going on. We can't save the world by ourselves. We can't put our hands in everything. So I look at what I'm doing as I'm working with mental health and helping people shift their thought process. I look at my platform and what I do is part of the solution, right? Sometimes what you do to help is take care of yourself, right? Being of sound mind, right? There's just so much happening. But the things that we're watching, if we're not mindful, we can find ourselves being um, emotionally responding to all the things that we're seeing. I just seen a post. There's a psychologist I love, Dr. Judith Joseph, and she was sharing about this study that she was on another podcast. She's so lucky, and she was sharing a study about how when they took people's phones away for 2 weeks, they took people's phones away for 2 weeks. Their joy numbers, or because they was talking about not experiencing joy, started to rise, right? Because they're not being consumed by all of the stuff that's happening. They're making connections. They're in nature. So really being mindful of how much social media you're consuming, even if it's not about it being bad news, just sitting on your phone all day, in between the moments you have, not really enjoy your food, not really allowing the sun to hit you. That's the problem. Another way media consumption can influence us. So, normalization of behavior. So, media often portrays certain behaviors as normal or acceptable. Being mindful, a lot of teenagers, or a lot, so I'm 42, and I didn't grow up with social media. Social Facebook came out when I was in college, and I think that a lot of the shows and things that people are seeing, because you see them so much, you get desensitized and they feel normal. The way that they show crime, or people go live and somebody just got shot or something, right? People get so desensitized to it. I haven't been desensitized. Like, that stuff really makes me sad. I think about the people's families. And so there's a lot of ways that when you are over consuming certain media, the behavior starts to seem normal, like being depressed. Or I think about, and I'm not knocking church, but I grew up in church. I think about certain like churches, how being poor or not having nothing, people, it just becomes normal, like as if they're not supposed to have wealth or have joy, right? It's the way that the wealth, or like you see the pastors and stuff with these like nice cars, and everybody in the sanctuary kind of suffering. And I'm not saying this is all churches, but there's this normalization of behaviors that take place when we consume certain media over and over again. So being mindful. I'll watch a reality TV show, but I know that that is a reality TV show, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and what we see is not always what it is. Like, I'm conscious of that. Sometimes if you're watching this stuff, you're not conscious of that. You're seeing the girl get the 50 roses, and roses aren't cheap, and then you don't realize you may have an attitude with your partner because they ain't never got you a rose, right? So being mindful of recognizing what you're consuming, how is it making you feel? And then these cognitive patterns, right? So repeated exposure to specific themes or narratives can create cognitive biases. So this example, it says if someone is constantly exposed to negative portrayals of certain groups or situations, it may shape their beliefs, attitudes towards those groups, leading to stereotypes or prejudices. I grew up watching Law and Order, Matlock, those like kind of crime shows, right? And it was like normal for the police to press for stuff because we're like, oh, they're guilty, right? We know they're guilty. It wasn't until all of the things came out, and a lot of people have already been aware. I didn't understand systemic racism until I got to college in my Africana studies class. Like, I literally was oblivious to it. Now when I'm watching, if I'm watching like a Law and Order, or those like Chicago Blues, or and they're roughing up somebody, I immediately like get pissed off. Before, I never used to get pissed off because I seen it so much, it was just normal. But then I recognize, like, this isn't normal. This is why there's so much stereotypes that take place within the black community, not just with outside races, but even with our own race. Like, there's so much biases that take place when people are portrayed, look a certain way or move a certain way or have certain clothes on. We don't realize it's because they normalize that those are the criminals in these certain shows, right? So like my mind is so aware of how certain things are portrayed and how it may not be fair. Now, conversations, right? So we just talked about how media can affect you. Let's talk about the conversations that you're having with people, right? So social influences of social interactions. So the conversations we're having with friends, families, colleagues can significantly impact our self-perception and emotional state. So on both ends, it's not just a negative way it can affect us, because it can affect us positive ways. And also, let me just be clear with the media stuff. I kind of like hit on like the ways it can affect you negatively, but I listen to motivational videos almost every day. I send quotes to people, I send things that stick out for me. Those things that I'm listening, they have an effect, but they have a positive effect where it's making me feel like I can conquer my day. It's making me feel that like this day is going to be great when I start my day that way, right? So not only does the media can affect you in a negative way, it can also affect you in a positive way. Obviously, my podcast, my platform, I talk about mental health. I talk about ways you can shift your thinking. So obviously, there's positive effects of the media, and the same with conversations. What we're getting into. So, self-perception, emotional state. So positive supportive conversations can boost your self-esteem and encourage personal growth, while negative or critical conversations can lead to self-doubt and feelings of inadequacy, right? So being mindful when you talk to certain people, my circle is a lot smaller than it was before, but I recognize now that I'm older and I can look back how certain people, the things they would say would affect me in a certain way, and not realizing how I'm feeling because it's based off of what they've said. I can't help what people say, but I can be mindful on how much engagement I have with them. I started off this podcast saying, like, when people are at work talking about, oh, all the toxic stuff that's happening, and then you leave work, you call and talking about it, you're keeping yourself in that space, not realizing that this conversation is affecting me in a negative way. Now, let's say you find a group, let's say you want to become an entrepreneur and you find a group that's doing things, you'll be surprised. Being in that group of entrepreneurs will help influence you, and it will help you feel like, you know what, I can do this. So the conversations you're having with people, being mindful how they can lead you into this way of opportunity and growth, or to stagnation and poor self-esteem. Another way conversations can affect you is emotional contagion. So emotions can be contagious. Engaging with people who are consistently negative or pessimistic can drain your energy. And then obviously, if you're talking to people that are positive, when people talk to me, they always say like, dang, I feel so motivated, I feel this. When you listen to my podcast, my platform is meant to encourage you, to empower you. So like those kind of conversations I have with people are typically empowering and encouraging. Now be mindful of the ones that are draining. You ever get off the phone with somebody and you're like, oh my God, I feel so tired. You may not even realize that I'm constantly bringing this awareness to people when I work with them about, it's not that those people are bad, but you've allowed yourself to be a um a dumping ground, right? Where they know, if I call Celeste, she gonna listen, right? And then you might have had 10, 50, 11 things to do, and you find yourself drained when you get off the phone. Conversations that you have with people can encourage you, motivate you, or it can drain you. And I'm not saying those people that may be draining, I'm not saying cut them off or don't talk to them, because some of them could be your kid, right? Or your friend. What I'm saying is be aware of what you're feeling and what you're doing with them, because a lot of times we stay in these states with people and we don't recognize how we're affected. And if you're really cool with them, it's okay to be like, hey, I realize like we're always talking about work, right? We're on vacation. How about we like leave work at work? You might be able to encourage them to get out of their own way, right? Instead of it just being, well, this is how Celeste is. Don't be telling people this is just how I am. Come tell me that you're struggling with how I'm communicating and that I'm draining you. I'll rather know, right? And if it's a meaningful relationship, I think it's important to let people know, because they don't know. If you've always allowed yourself to be available, that's all they know of you, right? But if you say, and it's not a bad thing if you say something like, I recognize that like you're always saying hard things about work, and it seems like it's draining, and I know I get overwhelmed by it. Have you thought about like maybe like let's just talk about work for 10 minutes and then let's just leave it there, right? Because what we engage in and what we consume will consume our mind. Our mind can only go at the direction that we take it. and we don't recognize that our mind is only going at the direction we take it. So if we're on reality TV and social media all day, our mind is only going at that direction, right? If we're listening to Celeste the Therapist Podcast, if we're listening to all these amazing motivational speakers, if we're in nature, right? If we are working on our goals, our mind is going to go at the direction that we're taking it, right? We have more power than we realize. We just have to start to like have faith and start to believe in ourselves. The last thing about conversations I want to say is conversations often reinforce our existing beliefs and attitudes. So unfortunately, like now, you can believe anything that's like crazy, somebody's going to believe it with you, right? um Being mindful on like what you believe in, make sure it's what you want and not what society says, right? My thing is if you're not harming anybody, like, right, you're not harming yourself or others, like allow the thoughts and stuff to flow, and see where it takes you. But being mindful that is your stuff and not someone else's stuff. The only way to do that is to really spend some time alone, right? We struggle with being alone, but I promise you it's helpful to spend some time alone so you can really know, is this me, or is this my culture? Is this my family? Is this what my mom and my daddy want me to do? Or is this what I really want to do, right? So these are some ways in which the conversations can affect us. And again, it can go in a positive direction or a negative direction. And then the last thing is, we just talked about the normalization of behaviors. Um, yeah, we just talked about that. So the forms of, oh, wait, no, I'm going backwards. Hold on, give me 1 second, guys. Let me go to the next one. Media consumption, we talked about that one. All right. And then we talked about conversations. And then the next one, the last one is self-talk. This is so important. Y'all know why this is so important? You with yourself 24/7. Of course, this is so important. Like your voice and the dialogue you have with yourself, it matters. So the way we talk to ourselves can have a profound impact on our mental health. For me, my self talk is positive. Even when I screw up, I'm like, all right, Celeste, it's okay. You got this. Like I'm constantly talking to myself in a positive way. So cognitive behavioral patterns, our thoughts influence our feelings and behaviors. If we consistently engage in negative talk, it can lead to a cycle of negative emotions and unproductive behavior. Conversely, practicing positive affirmations, constructive self talk can help break the cycle and promote healthier behaviors. Why are you feeling stuck? You may ask. Ask yourself, what are you saying to yourself? I'm constantly reframing, even in real time when I'm working with people. Wait, can you say that again? And so they'll be like, dang, that didn't sound right. It doesn't sound right. And guess what? That's what you're saying to yourself all the time. If you could just say it callously and say it to me, I know when you're by yourself, that's how you're talking. Change happens with making a decision to change. But if even in your mind, you're blowing that decision and telling yourself it's not going to work, how are you going to make that change? Remember, your mind goes at the pace that you take it. Where are you taking your mind? Right? What are you telling yourself? And then the next thing I want to say is mindset shifts, right? Shifting the way you think, baby. That's what we're doing over here. So by consciously changing our self-talk, we can shift our mindset from a fixed perspective, believing our abilities are static, to a growth mindset, believing we can develop our abilities. This shift can lead to increased motivation and willingness to embrace challenges. When I tell y'all we are malleable, we can change just because we were brought up a certain way, just because we were exposed to certain things, just because we've been through certain things, doesn't mean that we can't create change. We can absolutely create change, but I recognize it starts with our mind. It starts with what we are consuming, what we're allowing in our mind is so important. The last thing I'll say about this, right? Because I'm all about like, how do we change that? Media, right? So I said media, conversations, and self talk. If you're following me on YouTube, you can see it on the screen. So start curating your social media feeds and choose uplifting content, right? Be mindful of what you are consuming. Even if you're not ready to do that yet and curate your feed, pay attention to what's coming up for you when you're watching this stuff. Conversations, be intentional on engaging in conversations that inspire and uplift you, and set boundaries with negative influence. So if your coworker wants to keep talking about work after work, hey, it's 5 o'clock, baby. We off. Like, let's go have a drink. Let's go for a walk. Let's leave work at work. Until you make that decision to be intentional on what you engage in, people will constantly consume you with the negative talk, right? And you will constantly feel like you're drained and not realize it. Self talk. Be intentional about positive self-talk and affirmations. When I tell you like you're with yourself 24/7, believe that. Listen to what I'm saying. It's not a lie. You are with yourself all the time. And so if you can't talk life into your life, right? How you expect for change to happen, right? Change is going to happen, but it starts with you. It's not about your past. We can't change our past. It's not about what somebody's not doing. We can't make them do anything. It's going to start up here. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that makes sense. If you're new here, if you're in the Boston area, Stoughton area, I have a wellness center. We have 3 regular classes that take place once a month. We have mindful yin, we have restorative yoga, and we have a rest and restore. If you go to STWYT, you can find it. This month, we are going to have 2 new classes. We are going to have a trauma informed yoga session, and you can find out the details on stwyt.com. That is happening Saturday, June 14th at 10 a.m. And then at the end of the month, we're going to have a sound healing class with Jillian Miller. And if you're not familiar with trauma informed yoga, it can help you with your nervous support system, body awareness. It's an empowered space, right? This is a visual on YouTube. I'm reading it for people that are listening. And then for sound healing, right? The frequencies and the way that it flows with this type of somatic work can help you with your anxiety. It can have your system create this calmness and focus, right? So one of the things I created this wellness center. Yeah, I have a practice where I have clinicians under me, but what my main focus has been with creating this is these somatic classes. I want us to get into our body. I want us to not just like think about or intellectualize what we need. I want us to like allow our body to give itself what it needs, right? And so that's why I created it. Black owned, women owned, right? So you know you can come here and feel comfortable and know like the space is for you. So if you are curious about any of the classes that I do or have questions, go to my website, stwyt.com. Follow me on all social media platforms at Celeste the Therapist. Email us at the Wellness Center. It's info at stwyt.com. Again, that's info at stwyt.com. And until next time, beautiful people. Oh yeah, also I have 2 books. If you're watching me on YouTube, you can see I have this guided journal called 365 Days of Intentional Living. And I also have this book called Relationship Goals. It's a guide to a healthy relationship. You can find those books and the classes and information about me at either stwyt.com, that's my wellness center, or you can go to my website, celestetherapist.com. Until next time, beautiful people, I will talk to you later.